Prepare the live stream. So it is Friday, May 21st, and it is just before the top of the hour. It's 8:58 p.m. Do you know where your little ones are, Bing Bong?
Oh, you better. You better.
I mean, you better watch out and you better not cry. It's going to be Christmas in July before we blink.
Yeah.
And if anyone can hear the dulcet sound of my tones, let me know in the chat room.
Yeah.
Because inquiring minds, they want to know. And, we could be live, but we might not be live until someone tells me they hear me. Does anybody hear me? Anybody hear me?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me calling? Can you hear me calling you? I can't find the document.
Okay, let's see. One sec, I can send you a link.
Oh, wait.
Because there's another one here too I can send you.
Oh, okay, I got the original read-only one you sent me.
Okay, you can use that one. Nothing's changed with that one.
Okay.
And let's see if anybody can hear me. Toppie, are you checking the chat room? Or the sound?
Well, unfortunately, I'm trapped somewhere that I don't know where I am. But I'll okay, wait a minute. Now, I think I can do that now, DJ. Seriously, I will do that any second now.
Okay.
God knows I could be of some help tonight. Wouldn't that be nice if I could be of some...
Yes, they can hear us. They can hear us loud and clear.
They can hear us. Excellent. So without further ado, shall I kick this armadillo?
Yeah, let's do it, baby.
Okay.
Let's do it, baby.
Good evening. It is Friday, May 21st.
I'm scared already.
Welcome to the Marionette Theater. Mwah! Please take your seats. The show is about to begin. Well, hi-de-ho there, neighbor-type person, Mr. Toppie. How are you this fine evening?
I've had better days, DJ, but I'm fine now. I swear to Jeebus, I'm okay.
The white coats have taken you off of their call list, huh?
Basically.
We had a humdinger of a day on the old thermometer here in the Western New York, and I think it might have gotten near 90. And it was quite toasty. This not even the end of spring yet, but I guess that's around the corner.
Yeah. Oh, in fact, I'm turning my fan off right now because I think it's making
noise. we have some things going on behind the curtain here, and but yeah, I think that we've got an early start to the summer, or at least a taste of summer. Boy, somebody can work that into a product pitch, I'm sure.
A taste of summer. Oh my God, Matt's touching his nipples. Good Lord.
We do have another person here in the balcony. It's getting a little crowded, but it's okay. We've been vaccinated, and we've been craving some human contact lately. So if you folks will please give a round of applause, our partner in crime from the other coast, our UniVoz brother in crime, Mr. Matt Burlingame is here tonight.
Oh, excuse me. I was just finishing my mouse. You caught me off guard. It's delicious. Raspberry.
Oh, is that a late Easter treat, sir?
Actually, we'll get to that. Maybe.
Oh.
Yeah. It was a special effect from what we're going to talk about.
Oh, yes. I'm forgetting my place here. We are tilting towards the 80s, folks, with the program of tonight's discussion. And speaking of things worth talking about, we have our senior showgirl who is somewhere in the house. Gertie, are you around, ma'am?
Oh, you better believe it. If Matt Burlingame's here, I'm here. And Maddie Pooh, I got some things down at the concession stands later for you.
Ooh,
Yeah, I'll
I
meet
love
you there.
that.
I'll meet you there, buddy.
Okay, Gertie. Well, if you'll get yourself downstairs there, let our folks in the audience know what we're discussing tonight.
Okay. I'm going right now. Bye. I'll see you later. Bye. Mike is a cameraman for the local news station. Ever since the divorce, he's been struggling to make ends meet. Until one day, his team is invited to join the reception for a somewhat foreign delegation, as in from outer space. After an impressive entrance, somehow it's hard to believe the visitors are merely in need of some basic supplies. Are they wolves in sheep's clothing? Or are our new alien visitors about to share their wealth and gratitude? Well, grab a can of hairspray and your 80s workout clothes. It's time for the humankind's last stand. Stand. All right, hit it, boys.
What do you get when you take a dash of the silver screen, a pinch of golden oldies, and a smidgen of streaming? It's time for Matinee Minutia with your hosts DJ and Toppie.
Okay, one sec here. I'm sorry, I lost one little teeny thing. Okay, let's see. Let me adjust that. Honk.
Folks in the chat room and Discord, etc. I'd be there tonight, except I've had several. I don't see you, and I'm sorry about that. Several computer problems. I'll be there next time, folks.
Testicle difficulties, stand by. Speaking of the chat room, I will. Yes, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. If we look over the balcony, we have our old pal from the Mid-Atlantics there, our friend Aunt Tudor, who's so kind to meet us at Farpoint each year. We also have the queen of the Tilted Midwest there, Ma Ren, is in the chat room.
Hi, Maren.
We also have our old pal from the Great White North in Fort Maple, Tommy Hash Browns, is in our chat room tonight.
Hi, Tommy.
Oh, and for those of you listening to the podcast version, some of the fun that we're having in the chat room is we have some eye candy. We have a picture of one of the stars of tonight's show, all ready for the pool. You'll have to come to the chat
Mr.
room.
Marc Singer. He's so delicious.
So speaking of delicious, Mr. Smellie.
Yeah.
Take it away. We have one of the things we do here.
That's right. DJ, this here miniseries came out in 1983. Now, that's a long time ago. Let's remind people what was going on in the world back then.
Okay, the U.S. in 1983. In 83, the musical Annie was performed on Broadway for the last of over 2,000 shows, 2,377 to be exact.
Okay, that's enough of that.
And that was Toppie's audition. In Hawaii, Mount Kilauea began erupting and is still to this day.
Well, alrighty then, Mount Kilauea. Be that way.
I mean, driving down property values. Just like the Reagan administration. Oh, did I say that? And it's still okay. So Apple, yes, the trendsetters in the computer world. Well, they released the Lisa. You probably haven't heard of it, but it was the first commercial computer. It came with quite the price tag. The U.S. EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, began evacuation of dioxin-contaminated small town in Missouri called Times Beach.
I've had that rash before.
Then President Ronnie Reagan, he announced the Star Wars Missile Defense Program. Also,
pew, 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 pew.
And Carrie Fisher had nothing to do with it. In New England, their Maine schoolgirl Samantha Smith was invited to the Soviet Union after a letter she wrote about fears of nuclear war was read. And National Missing Children's Day. Let's see here. Etan Khalil Potts was one of the first missing child cases to have a photo appear on a milk carton. So, the heyday of the face on the milk carton, that began in the 80s there, 83. And let's see, astronaut Sally Ride, she became the first woman in space in 83. And a few other things rounding out the year. Gyanan Bluford becomes the first African-American astronaut in space. Miss Vanessa Williams, who you might know from shows like Desperate
She didn't go
Housewives.
up into space too, did she?
Well,
No.
I don't know. If you pay enough money these days, anything's possible. Vanessa Williams became the first African-American woman crowned Miss America.
Oh, that's right.
Yes, later taken away, but
Mhm.
Reagan signed a bill creating a federal holiday on the third Monday of every January to honor American civil rights leader Martin Luther King. About time. And lastly, the Food and Drug Administration approved cyclosporine. Now, this was an important drug because it revolutionized organ transplants at the time. You used to have an exact tissue match. And cyclosporine made it possible for people to live longer lives after an organ transplant.
I've forgotten all about that cycle thing, but I do remember it being a big thing back then.
It also made organs taste better when the visitors ate them.
Go there.
It was a nice spice.
It's a condiment, yes.
Indeedy do. Folks, there were a few people born that year in 83, so I'll just say it's Carrie Underwood, country musician. Mila Kunis. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
That's 30
she was at that 70s show. She was also on Jupiter Ascending. And by God, she's the wife of Ashton Kutcher.
Yes.
So there you go.
Mrs. Kutcher, Mark II.
Yeah. So, 83, when this miniseries came out, DJ, what was it competing against on the telly?
Oh, right. So when V premiered as a miniseries, it was a 2-night event, folks. And actually, before I tell you what's on the competition there, perhaps I should give you a little taste of the trailer for tonight's show. Shall I go ahead and play that?
Ew, yes. Matt's applauding, yes.
Oh, wrong button, sorry.
We wondered what beings from another world would look like. And then, at the moment of meeting, we learned they were just like us.
He doesn't even look like Mr. Spock.
We have come because we need your help. Our planet is in serious environmental difficulties.
Their purpose on Earth, to save their dying world. The visitors desperately needed to import manufactured chemicals not found on their planet.
And in return, we will gladly share with you all the fruits of our labor.
The visitors were warmly welcomed into every facet of our culture. It became a kid's dream to sign up with the Visitor Youth Corps. They earned our friendship, and sometimes even more. The visitors became a welcome addition to our lives. We're here to stay. My Mike Donovan and his colleague Christine Walsh became the celebrated T news crew to cover visitor affairs. But one night, aboard the mothership, Donovan made a startling discovery.
The operation is working perfectly.
The visitors were lying. They were not like us. They were not our friends. Donovan rushed back to get his hot story on network television. But before the broadcast, the visitors commandeered the airwaves. The alien spokesman, John, announced to the world that Mike Donovan was a threat to society, as was anyone who questioned the visitors' mission of peace and universal friendship. Donovan tried to tell Christine.
Mike, I work so closely with these people every day.
You don't believe me, do you?
Reptilian with tongues that...
It's all true. I've seen it, Chris.
Donovan's mother couldn't be convinced.
That's the most outrageous story I've ever heard.
He became a fugitive. The aliens were determined to kill him before he spread the truth. But soon more people began rebelling against the visitors' stranglehold. However, anyone who tried to escape was taken prisoner.
So that was a taste of what was
Good Lord! Did all that
scary.
happen? Holy cow!
Yes, that was actually a recap of the first night because it was a 2-night
Oh,
event.
that was only the first night.
yes.
Holy cow!
It was a much anticipated event. So in 1983, on the old boob tube, V was up against, well, it didn't have much competition, but V aired on the Peacock, the NBC, and it was over 2 nights, Sunday, May 1st and 2nd at 9 p.m. Now, on the other networks, on ABC, it was the Sunday night movie. And that film was 1941. It was a film about Pearl Harbor, and it was actually directed by Mr. Steven Spielberg. Talk about some stiff competition there. It
Wow.
also featured Dan Aykroyd, Ned Beatty, and John Belushi.
Yeah.
And then also in competition with V on Sunday nights, CBS ran The Jeffersons, and one of my personal favorites, Alice.
You know what else was a much anticipated event in 1983?
Do tell.
Yes.
My puberty.
Oh, Matthew! That's wonderful. Oh.
And we're so
And
glad
I think
that
Marc Singer jump-started it. So
Oh
Yeah.
dear. Oh my goodness. Oh
And-
my goodness.
and we're so glad that your voice is decided to normal out, right?
yes.
I don't think that's happened yet.
No.
So we have a special place here in the balcony for our guest of honor, sharing the script with us, Mr. Matt here. Now, we here at the Marionette are a venue with many a celebrated history. We were once a place for vaudeville, and we've even had a magician act. Now, speaking of magic, the person behind the TV series V, actually the miniseries is what we're talking about tonight, the director, is Mr. Kenneth Johnson. Matt, would you let the listeners know a little bit about Mr. Johnson?
Well, first off, Mr. Johnson was born in Arkansas. We forgive him. He had no control. Then he began actually directing for television in the late 1960s, so he was quite old. His first TV productions were starred comic Alan King and Buddy Hackett.
Oh.
I know, right? And his first series, oh my God, was The Bionic Woman, 1976, with Lindsay Wagner, who is a dead ringer for my mother.
Whoa. Yes, that is the first series he created. Yep.
And then, just 6 years after V, he produced Alien Nation, 1986, with Gary Graham, 21 episodes, 6 TV movies, and one of my absolute favorite TV series. And then 7 Days in 1990, and last was Jag.
Hmm.
Yeah, he
You
did
know-
10 episodes of that.
Yeah, I don't. I vaguely remember that.
You know, we
Me too.
actually
Vaguely.
we actually discussed Alien Nation on our second season, if you'll go back
Yes.
and look out for that episode. And I've actually had the privilege of meeting some of the Alien Nation cast at a past sci-fi convention. My only sadness related to Alien Nation is that as one tends to do if you pay too much attention to things. Apparently, Gary Graham is a right-wing nut job, and I could say
Oh,
that because this is my show.
Oh, that's disappointing because he went on to do so many amazing sci-fi characters, including in Enterprise.
Yeah, he also did a film that was basically the first American version of Japanese robots. You know how we have the Pacific Rim movies now with the robots that fight the dinosaurs, basically. Well, there was a film in I want to say the mid to late 80s called Robot Jocks. And Gary Graham was in this film. And, well, if you can track down a copy, there is a scene where you might see a different side of Gary Graham. And I mean the side you see on Laundry Day.
Well, I don't want to see it now, though, if he's a right-winger. I'm sorry. It just ruins everything.
Before we leave Kenneth Johnson, the director and creator of V, and he certainly seems to be proud of this creation. He's still talking about V that he did all those years ago, so he's still very proud of it. But the other credit that I can't not say is he created and produced the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah. And that show had several seasons, I do believe.
Five cut of five. Anyway, so Kenneth Johnson certainly seemed to love fantasy and sci-fi, that's for sure.
Okay, well, so that was Mr. Johnson, the magician behind the show that we're discussing tonight. And we have a roster here of talent that brought us the characters on screen there. Mr. Smellie, tell us about the first one, kind of the first officer of the aliens, the visitors.
Yeah, she was quite the lady. On V, she was an alien. The actress's name is Jane Badler. She was born in New York City, began acting on TV in the late 70s. She had some roles on One Life to Live, and then after V, she went on to Falcon Crest, and then a remake of Mission Impossible. And later on, she moved to Australia. But Jane Badler, she was a baddie on V. And she just ate those guinea pigs and rats right up. That's all I can say.
And she had a cameo in the more recent remake, but we don't really talk about that because, sometimes when shows are remade, the original producer isn't as fond of those. So tonight we're talking about the original. So I'll go ahead and talk about the next member of the cast before we pass off to our guest to continue. Let's see now. One of the people in the cast was an everyday person. She was the pretty girl on the screen. Her name was Julie or Juliet in some versions of the script, but Julie. Faye Grant, and she played Julie, the long-locked doctor, or medical student, basically. Michigan-born, Faye Grant left home at 18 and hitchhiked through the U.S., Mexico, and Canada, so she's well-traveled.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, and after living in Mexico City, she began acting in commercials, which led her to move to L.A. I'm sorry. And then following V, Faye Grant had a role in a film called Private Eye, or actually a failed pilot for NBC. It was a detective show set in the 50s in Hollywood. So I'm sure that somebody's digging out that script to try to pitch it again. And she was previously, and this is her other claim to fame, or maybe not, She was previously married to the actor who played the first officer on the motion picture Star Trek film, Stephen Collins, who, of course, got himself in trouble after he was on Seventh Heaven, but we won't talk about that. They got divorced in 2015, and according to sources, he divorced her. But yeah, so the next member of our cast, Mr. Matt, tell us about John, the leader.
Amazing Richard Hurd, who had only started acting just a little bit before that because he began acting in the 70s. Well, by the time he was cast in V, he'd been in over 200. Yeah, that good look, good doing that, right? 24 TV roles. Among that included Dallas, Heart to Heart, Simon and Simon, and a recurring role in T.J. Hooker, which starred William Shatner. And he played Captain Dennis Sheridan. Later on, an admiral in Sequest 2032. And Admiral Paris's, father, Admiral Paris in Star Trek Voyager, who was Tom Paris's father. And then sadly, he passed away last year at 87 and had over 155 credits. And I remember him working so much in the 80s. He was just everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Now, this was a cast of thousands. We can't get into all of them, folks. Certainly, one of the more famous ones was Robert Englund, who was the guy with the nails, slasher people in the dreams. Who is he? Freddy
Krueger.
Freddy
Krueger. Yes.
Yeah, and I think the way this worked out was right after he did the first Freddy Krueger movie, he was in V. And then, of course, he went on to be in multiple sequels to those Freddy Krueger. It was a franchise, but I believe it was the first movie, and then he did V. Okay, so he's in that. But the last person we're going to focus on is the guy with the pecs. They gave the credits alphabetically, so Marc Singer kind of came, with his S last name, came down at the end. But really, I think we could say he's the lead of the show. That he's the character that carries it. He's the actor that carries it. And Marc Singer is from British Columbia. He was born in Canada. He's the brother of Laurie Singer. You might know her from Footloose and VR5. He began acting in the 70s. Had established well over 21 TV roles by the time he was cast in V. And then his other big thing was a lead in Phantasm and also The Beastmaster. That's the thing I remember him most for. He had this bag of critters. That's all I remember. And his pecs. Anyways, after V, he had a number of appearances on Dallas around about 1986. And much more recently, he was appearing on The Young and the Restless. And very recently, he was on Arrow. About the DC superheroes. So there you go, Marc Singer. I think he does a lot of convention appearances for his work in the Beastmaster and V especially. So that's the lead, Marc Singer.
Yeah, he was also in a movie where he played a stripper.
Oh, really?
Yes, with Gregory Harrison, if you remember him.
Oh, who talked about this? I heard someone talking about this.
Yes, I think it was called Bachelor or something like that.
It was a TV movie, right?
I'm not sure. I would imagine it was because it was a bit low budget. But it's worth watching if you like those men. You should watch that movie.
Yeah, that goes way back.
Okay, Matt, confess. Do you have a copy in your nightstand?
I do not, but I actually did own it on VHS for a very long time.
Ooh, okay. Well, I'll make a similar confession. I once stayed up all night just to watch Finding Mr. Goodbar with Diane Keaton and what was the pretty boy in
Richard
um
Gere?
yes, in Pretty
Oh.
Woman, because he was a gigolo in Finding Mr. Goodbar.
Mhm.
Yes.
That's just
yes.
nuts, DJ.
I
Nuts in the
know.
bar. Mr.
Speaking of
Yes.
nuts, tonight's show was a listener request. So there you go, the sound of the loon. Norman, they're back. And speaking of listener requests, this is where we move on from the cast. We just have a little fun discussing the show. It's not any bullet point in any meeting agenda. So Matt,
Yes.
what's your recollection of V? Did you, highly anticipate this through the commercials when it was on TV, that fateful weekend in '83?
Yes. And I think I did because I was a huge Star Trek fan
Mm-hmm.
from reruns. I'm not that old. But I was just absolutely like, I want to see this. And after the first episode aired, I was so enthralled in this show that my grandmother used it as a way to make sure that I did anything that she wanted. So I'd take out the trash, massage her feet, whatever it was that would get me to watch the show. I would do it because I was so in love with it. I watched it every time it aired, and I had a great big scrapbook of all the TV guide covers, and I listed things that I did, and I read all the books, and I had all the comics. I was just so in love with this show.
Yeah, this was a big deal, as I recall, when it came up originally. There were a lot of promos because at the time, no internet or nothing. And how would you find out about upcoming television series? Well, there's TV Guide, and there were a few other magazines, but mostly as you watch television, you would see a promo in between commercials of what the network was hyping. And so if you were watching NBC, you would have seen many, many promos for this thing called V.
Yes.
And they really ballyhooed it, and because they spent a lot of money on it, a whole lot of money. And so they wanted this to be successful. And yeah, I think that's how I caught it too. And I said, well, I got to again tune into this, man. And I really loved it. It was a two-parter, this miniseries, and it had a great reveal. The one magazine called it the best reveal in television history of that decade, which is when one of the visitors at the end, I think, of the first part, she holds up, she's got a guinea pig and she eats it. And that's when it's revealed. One of the greatest reveals of TV ever, just what these aliens really are. And I have to agree with that. It was like, how could you not tune in to the next part?
Mouthies. Mouthies.
Yes, that was a pretty terrific scene. There was a one of the worker kind of class, because they did have sort of their type. They had the leaders in their military, and then they had the grunts sort of, and that's who Matt's imitating is one of the men who was just one of the grunts, and he was tracking down his lunch by going to the dumpster.
Oh yeah.
But I was a little bit too young to have the remote in my own hand when this originally came out, and I imagine that somebody had to press the buttons on the analog cable box and press the lever to get it to the station.
The lever.
I have some fun memories of those old cable boxes, and I might actually just pick one up for nostalgia's sake. But when I was a kid, that was a show that I wasn't old enough to watch just yet, because the previews for it showed the secret after that first night there, that underneath that facade of they look just like us is, oh my God, they're a scary beast underneath. So I couldn't watch it when it first came out, but I'll talk to you more about my impressions of this as we continue the discussion. But we are at about halfway through tonight's show. So we're going to trot on over here to the concession stand where our senior showgirl, Gertie, is serving up a special cocktail or two in honor of our guest of honor.
Hi, Matthew. I put a mouse in a blender.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gummy mice. Ooh, gummy mice
yeah.
and margaritas.
Just another tequila mouse rise.
Yeah, I was just kidding about a real mouse.
Oh.
Yeah.
So for your enjoyment, listeners, I have a interview with Mr. Kenneth Johnson, the producer-director of V.
When I first began thinking about V, I had finished The $6 Million Man, The Bionic Woman. I had done 4 years, almost 5 years of The Incredible Hulk at Universal, and had just joined Warner Brothers. And I read a novel by an American author, Sinclair Lewis, very famous author, wonderful writer. And he had written a book called It Can't Happen Here, about a fascist uprising in the United States, similar to what had happened in Germany and Italy during World War II. At the beginning, I didn't think about doing V as a science fiction piece. I had actually researched carefully and written a script that was about a grassroots takeover of the American government by fascists. And there was no aliens or reptilians or anything like that involved. And I was planning to do it as a motion picture, as a feature. And I was having dinner with my friend Brandon Tartikoff one night, who was the president of NBC, dear guy. And he said, what are you doing, Kenny? And I said, well, I've got this thing. I started to tell him about it. And he got very excited. And he said, oh, I want to read it. And I said, Brandon, this is not television. This is a feature. This is big stuff, you know. And he said, let me read it. And so he read it and he got very excited. And Brandon could be very compelling and very seductive. And he said, look, let's do this as a big miniseries. And it could be a series that would go on as a 1 hour episodic show after that. And, you know, I thought about it and I said, well, okay, that would be really interesting because there's so many wonderful stories to tell of intrigue and suspense and tension and paranoia about what it's like to be under occupation. And he said, yeah, but you know, Kenny, I'm not sure Americans will really understand fascism. And I said, well, it's not a complicated concept, Brandon. You shave your head, you put on a brown shirt, and you beat somebody up, you know? And he said, no, but couldn't it be an outside force that would come in, like the Chinese or then the Soviets, you know? And I said, I just don't believe they could sustain a long-lasting occupation of the United States. And I don't know, somehow the subject of aliens came up and I went, ah! So I really was not excited about the idea of doing something that was, you know, that involved aliens. But I went home and I was thinking about it, and I got to thinking, well, it's wait a minute, this is kind of interesting. I could really work on a metaphorical level. I could tell a piece that would have all of a sudden this wonderful eye candy and this big visuals of spacecraft and everything like that would hook in an audience, particularly a younger audience. And then once I got them, then I could tell the story that I really wanted to tell, which was a story of human conflict, of human relationships, of human emotions. So I went back to Brandon and I said, okay, I think I can do it the way that you're talking about. And I said, how does this sound to you? And I started telling him the story. And I sat in his office and literally told him the story for 2 hours. He never read the story. I just told it to him. And he said, that's great. Go write the script. And I said, don't you have any notes? In Hollywood, you always get notes, you know. And he said, no, what are you talking about? It's great. Go write the script. Okay. So I came back 19 days later with a 230-page screenplay. Brandon read it over a weekend. Literally, which again never happens in Hollywood.
And we are back.
What a great interview.
Maybe we should talk about how eerily all these years later V resonates even today, especially with our past administration. How spooky is that?
Yeah, well, it's very on point. As I watched it again, there were so many little things that I could recognize from the last 4 or 5 years, but also I loved how they brought in the Jewish aspect and really paralleled some of it, and actually part of that and the people in that, like Abraham and everything, was one of the things that really spurred them forward with the movement. So loved it.
Yeah, because I mean, I think that in more recent years, we know that I think the last surviving person from the Holocaust has gone on record as having passed. So that's, something that today's generation, they don't learn about in school anymore. So, watching things like V, it's kind of, to quote Galaxy Quest, it's a historical document because we're talking about experiences that, the elder members of the cast had lived through, and they're trying to teach the younger people this is what happened when you let when you let them pull the wool over your eyes. This is what's going to happen.
Right, you're going to get eaten, Daniel.
One of the things that happens on V is the propaganda is put forth by the visitors for Earthlings not to trust their scientists, because the scientists are seeing through the smoke screen and they're starting to talk. And so the visitors start a whole bunch of propaganda against don't trust your scientists. And what did we have with COVID and Trump?
It's really funny. I was just about to say, watching the show, I'm sitting there thinking, who's going to go throw a Molotov cocktail through a scientist's window? And yet, you know what? You're absolutely right. I hadn't even really thought of that. That's a great point, Toppie.
Because for those of you who may not have watched this yet, and it is available on certain digital services. I personally watched it through Amazon's Prime Video service, but they have everyday people, and they're explaining the level of influence that these visitors, the aliens, are having on society. As Toppie was saying, they're trying to turn people against the most informed citizens, the scientists. And we have somebody who's an everyday person who's a gardener at this woman's house, and he goes up to her, and there's a conversation through her window basically saying, I can't work for you anymore, Mrs. And she's like, it's because of my husband, isn't he? He's a scientist.
Another theme in V that has its roots in the Nazi Party is a movement begins with the young people of Earth who really latch on to the visitor story, and they begin a youth movement in support of the visitors, not unlike the youth movement of the kids in the Nazi Party, where what do you want to say? Deceived but brought in these children, and there was this bizarre amount of national pride in this very weird way, and these kids became almost monsters because they were turning in Jews and even their own relatives to the Nazis. Their own relatives, and they portrayed this on V. So V recalled a lot of this stuff, and I think it was pretty effective, and it never lost its sense of science fiction and the spaceships and everything. So certainly was appealing on a lot of levels.
And one of the scenes that reminds me of more recent years is when they have a press conference where the leader, John, is supposed to be talking to the public, and the underground, for lack of a better term, has figured out a way to kind of integrate themselves in with the staff, the catering people at this event. So they work their way into the party, and they take the footage that the cameraman, Mike Donovan, who is Mark Singer's character, he has gone aboard the mothership and he has recorded an encounter where he sees the true identity of the visitors under their fake human skin, and they need a moment to be able to expose them to the public. But then, after it's happened, the visitors take over the situation and they film a redo of the events and broadcast it as the real thing. Ergo, vis-a-vis today's fake news.
Fake news, absolutely. Yeah. Matt, I'm curious. I must have watched it, but I have no memory. But there was a sequel miniseries to this original miniseries. Did you watch it?
Yes, The Final Battle. And also there was a series as well.
Yeah, and for whatever reason, I remember the series. I just don't remember the sequel. The sequel miniseries, just a word about it. What was that like?
So that was The Final Battle, and that went from the point that, of course, the first one left off, where they had won a small victory, but they had captured, I believe at that point they had captured Julie, the rebel leader. And then all the way up until they found the secret weapon that was going to get them to leave Earth.
So was the second series, like, let's just say, maybe in the back of their head they thought about an ongoing series, but did they finish off the second series as if maybe that was the end of the story? Is that how they did it? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then they probably had really great ratings and they said, yeah, let's do an ongoing series.
Absolutely.
No, the thing that I remember about the ongoing series is way back in the original miniseries, a character called Robin got impregnated by an alien. And as I recall, she finally gives birth in the ongoing weekly series.
No, she gave birth in The Final Battle.
She did.
That was how they found the weapon to get the aliens off of Earth, was because of her birth. Yeah.
Well, Matt, maybe there was a birth. There was like a big alien baby sequence in the TV series. And I think that's what I'm thinking. Do you remember what that was? That's the one thing I remember most.
Series? No, in The Final Battle.
Yeah.
When Rob, I don't think we're worrying about spoilers, are we?
No.
Okay. So basically, Robin, who was played by Blair Tefkin, and her interesting acting skills, shall we say. So she gets pregnant by a visitor, which it was an experiment by Diana. And so she gets pregnant, she has the first child, and it's a beautiful, human-looking, healthy girl who, when gets up close to her, sticks her like snake tongue out of her and freaks Robin out. Ah, my God, my baby's got a forked tongue. And then they're all like, okay, well, we gave birth. And then all of a sudden, Julie looks over and sees something else is happening. I think we're giving birth to twins. And then everybody freaks out and their lizard baby comes out with bright blue eyes and a human tongue. And it was one of the freakiest moments of 1980s television. But it's because of bacteria that was in that baby, because that baby died, that they were able to find the weapon to get rid of V from the planet. Basically, they poisoned the planet to the visitors.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, it was also interesting because the baby, which was named Elizabeth, she basically, within the course of 3 days, became an 11-year-old child, and who spoke the alien language without even knowing it, and was a very magical child that would end up bringing Praitenama to the world.
Peace.
Yes.
And
I'll just finish up with the TV series. It suffered from a much lower budget, of course, and they relied on using the same shots that were done for the miniseries over and over again. And for some reason, it lasted, I don't know, 13 episodes or something like it. And we never heard of it again until it was resurrected. But I sure did like that ongoing weekly series because I think every episode ended with a cliffhanger, and I love a cliffhanger.
It was a really bad series, but it was also, if you were a V fan, it was a great series.
Absolutely. DJ, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say that in hindsight, looking back at this being a program from the 80s, some parts are difficult to watch, not just because, you know, you might be used to watching something with today's production values, but, you know, it wasn't necessarily consistent. Like, I considered the makeup that was done on the visitors to be well done. You know, when they would have a scene where their skin would be shredded to expose their reptilian real bodies underneath, that was actually pretty well done. The birth of the child, that was a little bit less believable on camera, but, you know, historically and classically, birth has always been something difficult to get real on camera when it's not.
Right.
So,
not to mention the fact that she wasn't big enough to have both of those inside of her.
Exactly. But that, you know, from the perspective that this is 2021, watching that and being a fan of science fiction, I felt bad for the reptilian baby because it didn't live.
Right.
And of course, everybody was just freaked out that this thing had come out of her. And I'm just thinking, how is that any different than your dog or your cat giving birth and one of the members of the litter is like a runt?
Right. And also it's interesting that the other baby had to be taken out and this baby like clawed its way out. And they didn't have any help. It was just like, here I am.
A little a la Xenomorph in Alien with Sigourney Weaver.
Yes.
So let's talk about looking back on this, because I saw the first miniseries. I reviewed it recently. And I guess the thing I was tickled by most was the 80s style women and the two lead alien women who scowled at each other through the whole thing and vied for control. And they scheme against each other, these two alien women. And it was like, oh, the smoldering looks they give each other. That was my favorite thing on
was
rewatch.
On a spaceship.
Diana
and Lydia, yes.
Yeah, and Lydia, she was, I want to say that she was possibly British, the actress who played her, and she had such a presence when she came on screen because, you know, Diana, she was like the first officer or whatever, but this Lydia person that came on screen, she was like an admiral, and so she had better step to licking her boots because she was in charge. But, you know, that character that she played kind of reminds me of some of the henchmen that were in that, what was it, the third Superman movie that Terrence Stamp was in?
Well, he was only in the first two, but I don't know. Oh, well, you mean the third alien woman in the Superman.
Right, when they had General Zahn.
Yeah. I don't remember her name, but yeah.
Yeah, and it was interesting that Diana Jane Badler was actually an Australian actress.
Yeah, she continues to act to this day, but you know, unless you are specifically a fan of Australian programming, you probably haven't heard of these things.
But how hot was Philip?
Which one was Philip?
Philip was the head of the no, Martin. Okay, so Martin was the head of the fifth column, played by Frank Ashmore, who had just, he was so dreamy.
Mhm.
And then Philip, actually, when they rebooted this series, Philip was Martin's brother.
Hmm.
So it was able to have the same actor still play him.
Mm-hmm.
Matt, did you see that reboot? It wasn't a miniseries, but it was like a 2-season series.
Which one?
Yes, the reboot.
Yes, I did. And the first time I watched it through, I was highly disappointed. The second time I watched it through, I actually was like, wow, I wish they had done better in the beginning, because they were actually starting to go somewhere. And I think that's the problem with some of these series, is that they start out going very slow and very weak, and then they finish the season very strong, but nobody's interested at that point.
Who did that? Who aired it? Was it?
That was actually ABC, I believe, that aired that. I think.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Kenneth Johnson was not a fan of the remake, but I think a relation of his may have been involved with the production, because as I was doing some of the research for tonight's program, someone by the last name of Johnson was listed as working on the music for the V series in 2009.
Oh, I was confused by that credit too, because it seemed to indicate Kenneth Johnson composed the music.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, wait, I didn't know he composed music.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, I think that one of his children is in the music industry. I say children, but any kids of his are probably at least my age.
Yeah. I thought it was really interesting that series was full of actors from other sci-fi series. I mean, the entire cast was just full. Almost every major character came from another top sci-fi series. It was really great. I mean, Firefly, Haven, everywhere. But I do have one question for you when you're ready for it.
Go ahead.
Okay, so we follow V in the miniseries and the second miniseries through all this turmoil. The visitors have just taken over everyone. They're packing everybody on the meat plant. They're going to serve us up later. I mean, there is just the whole world is in chaos. And at the very end, when they finally do the thing that drives them off the planet, and they all the ships start taking off and everything, there's this shot of suburbia with all these families coming out of their houses cheering at them, and their lawns are perfect, the sprinklers are on, the houses are fine, they look like they've just been what have they been doing this whole time? Everybody else is going through hell. There's bombs bursting everywhere. There's all this stuff's going on, and they're just la-di-da. Oh, I guess they're going away. Bye-bye. Where have you people been? Are you collaborators? What's going on?
I wonder if the visitors had special programming airing during the day that had, subliminal messages. Buy our swag on QVC.
Do you not have to go to the black market like the other people to get, a can of tuna? What is this? And one of the things I'm very happy of, did you notice that there's no dogs? There's one dog at the very beginning in a camp. Mm-hmm. Other than that, there's no dogs, there's no cats through this whole thing. Mm-hmm. And I was very happy about that, because if I had seen one poodle in a cage, I would have been like, oh, I hate this show. I hate the poodle.
I almost wonder if maybe they recognize that, and let's not have them eat cats and dogs.
Yeah,
let's have them eat mice.
Gerbils, mice, or whatever. I mean, that's okay. The occasional human collaborator, Daniel.
But
I'm going to tell you, I gave a little clap when he was carried away.
Right, but it's very clear to me that there are certain cast members who were definitely friends with the producer, Mr. Kenneth Johnson. It's Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. He does something else, and blam, they're in there. The stringy blonde-haired lady whose character was Harmony, who fell in love with the visitor Willie. She was the often seen neighbor in Alien Nation who is concerned about the alien child going to her kid's school.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. Good catch, girl. I loved Harmony.
Yes. So, but yes, 1983 V, which actually stood for victory. And Kenneth Johnson's critique of the remake was that they actually called the visitors the V in that version, as if they were some, communicable STI or something.
Well, she did give everybody the, what did they call it in the second one? Not the clap. The I'm gonna give. Oh, bliss. That's what it was. Diana's gonna give us the bliss. Ooh. Or no, Anna. Sorry. Her mother was Diana.
Was that the precursor to Zima in the 80s?
No. Yes. I'm going to give you the bliss.
Oh, so we are towards the end of our show here. We're out here in the lobby, and we're at the part of the program what we call our snack train. This is where we're going to tell you about things that are maybe sort of related to V that you might also like if you've watched V or similar Kenneth Johnson shows. So I'll go ahead and go first. In our second season here on Matinee Minutia, we talked about a favorite of mine from my early teens. I watched Alien Nation in '89, and I was one of the folks that was so sad that it got canceled after one season and got replaced in its time slot with 90210. I was not I was not a member of the popular crowd in high school. I did not have a subscription to Tiger Beat, so my world was crushed. But yes, Alien Nation from '89 was the Kenneth Johnson series made for Fox. And also, I think if you like V, you might enjoy a series done in '88 by CBS, and it was a television version of a famous radio broadcast called War of the Worlds, based on H.G. Wells' novel. And it was, of course, like I said, a series retelling the radio drama TV style.
Nice, good choices. Matt, what about you? Did V make you think of something else?
Oh, did it make me no. I think that it was so original and wonderful that I didn't really, yeah, I can't. No, nothing compares to V.
I think you told me backstage that you were getting out your copy of Beastmaster to watch because you wanted more Marc Singer.
Oh, my mother and I watched that together many times for, well, actually maybe the same reason. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing I'm just going to recommend, and it's totally Kenneth Johnson, who was so dedicated to V, so dedicated to Alien Nation. The other series he was very dedicated to was The Incredible Hulk, and I would recommend anyone who hasn't seen it is to watch the pilot episode, the pilot movie, television movie for The Incredible Hulk, which I think is just called The Incredible Hulk. And it's the origin story of the Hulk, and it's pure Kenneth Johnson. It's just pure sci-fi fantasy, but great characters and good storytelling. So that's my recommendation. If you want more Kenneth Johnson,
I want to go back and watch Bionic Woman now.
Yeah. Kenneth Johnson got in on the back end of the $6 Million Man, and he wasn't nice. I'm sorry about that. He wasn't the showrunner or anything, but he came in as a scriptwriter, and he was the one that came up with the whole idea of Jamie Summers. And when it came time to, let's do a spinoff, Kenneth Johnson was like, yeah, gimme Jamie, gimme my character. I'm going to make a TV series of her. And he did.
And then he gave us Max the dog.
Yay.
I'm going to save the little girl.
And then later on, we got the sleep number beds, but they had more to do with Lindsay Wagner.
Yes, who is a dead ringer for my mother.
So, Toppie, if you will, sir, reach up on that shelf here and grab me that bag of coins the magician left behind.
Okay, let me get it. Here you go. Oh, there you go.
Okay, we're going to let you know what's coming down the pike here on our next episode, which will be Friday, June 4th. Alrighty, sir, if you'll hand me that capsule.
Here you go.
Alrighty. Our next episode. Well, in light of it being Pride in many parts of the country, it's June next month, so June's busting out all over. Maybe she needs some appropriate attire. Might break the dress code at work there. But anyways, we've got a mid-90s romantic comedy. It's a drama based on a play by the author of Addams Family Values and In and Out with Kevin Kline. It's a story of a 30-ish gay actor, waiter, who decides to become celibate, and the risk of AIDS has taken all the joy from sex. This film stars Star Trek's Patrick Stewart, Sir Patrick that is, and star of NBC's sitcom Wings, Steven Weber. Next time on Matinee Minutia, Jeffrey.
Hey!
Okay, well, we're going to take a look back over the balcony and say goodnight to our listeners. We had our friend Aunt Tudor from the Mid-Atlantics there. Oh, Hubby Billy did finally scrape in there. And Lady Janet was among us. Also have Maren there from the Midwest. And Tommy Hash Browns from the Great White North. Thank you so much for all of you joining us tonight.
Yes, thank you.
And our guest of honor, Mr. Matt, please, if you would be so kind, let our listeners know where else they can find you when you're not appearing on fabulous shows like this.
I will be down in the alley across the street. Oh, wait. Okay, so you can find me over at chubsgonewild.com. Yes, that's the one. At my other show, Chubs Gone Wild. And of course, at my other podcast, BigGaySexShow.com.
It's only ever whispered.
Yes, we're secret.
And word has it that he's actually written a word or two that's been put down on paper too. So you have a website for that as well, don't you, sir?
I do. It's called justkisstheguy.com, which will soon have information about my new book, which will be out next month.
Ooh, just in time for a spring/summer fling.
Well, you should read it first.
Alrighty. Well, Toppie, we are out here at the lobby and we're ready for the good old-fashioned goodbye. Can you do this old radio style? Could you say good night, Gracie?
Good night, Gracie.
Thank you for listening to Matinee Minutia. Our show streams live the first and third Friday of each month.
Go to univozpods.net, click the tower for audio, enter Discord for chat.
You can find the show wherever you listen to podcasts.
Tweet us on Twitter at Matinee Minutia.
Join our Facebook group.
Visit our webpage at matineeminutia.com.
Have an idea for a future show? Or just want to message us?
Email us at matineeminutia@gmail.com.
Oliver.
This has been an Ollybug production.
I have a voice.
I have a voice.
You have a voice.
You have a voice.
We have a voice.
We have a voice.
Unique voices in podcasting.
UniVozPods.net. I'm going to stop the broadcast.